There is a hillside in western Montana that has been feeding the same family for 11 generations. No store, no delivery, no bill at the end of the month. Just a piece of land, a set of practices passed from grandmother to granddaughter, and a food supply so complete that when the roads iced over last February and the nearest town was unreachable for 9 days, nobody inside that house went hungry or even noticed much of a difference. I drove out there in late September. A woman named Clara met me at the gate. She was in her mid-60s, deliberate in the way she moved, the kind of person who does not waste a word or a step. She walked me through what I can only describe as the most efficient piece of land I have ever stood on. Every square foot was doing something. Every plant was connected to something else. There was no separation between the food system and the land itself. They were the same thing. I have been doing this long enough now to recognize the feeling I get when I am standing in front of knowledge that somebody decided the rest of us did not need. I felt it in Holmes County with the Amish. I felt it in that farmhouse in August with no air conditioner running. I felt it again on that hillside in Montana. This was not primitive. This was not simple. This was engineering, old engineering, patient engineering. And it worked better than anything the modern food system has produced. Before I go further, if this kind of knowledge speaks to you, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I don't want you to miss what's coming next. That's all. Now let's get into it. The average American household spends $5,700 a year on groceries. That number comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics 2023 Consumer Expenditure Survey. Over a 20-year period, adjusted for the rate at which food prices have been climbing, that is, somewhere between $130,000 and $160,000 per household spent on food that someone else grew, processed, packaged, shipped, and marked up at every single step. And that does not count the $200 billion the American healthcare system spends annually treating diet-related chronic disease. A number published by the CDC in 2022. The food is making people sick and then charging them again to get better. Clara's family does not participate in that system. They have not participated in it for as long as anyone in the family can remember. And when I asked her what the secret was, she did not give me a single technique. She gave me a framework. You do not grow food, she said. You grow a system. The food is what the system produces. That sentence rearranged something in my thinking, and it has not gone back since. Let me take you to the beginning of this because the system Clara showed me did not start with her. It did not start with her grandmother. It starts roughly 15,000 years ago, when the first people arrived on this continent and began the long process of learning what every piece of land could give. What they developed over those millennia was not farming in the way we use that word. It was something more sophisticated. Ecologists today call it ecological management. The people who practiced it did not have a name for it, because they did not need one. It was just how you lived. The core of what Clara's family does, and what indigenous communities from the Gulf Coast to the Canadian border have done for centuries, is what agricultural researchers now call polyculture stacking. You do not grow one crop. You grow a community of crops that support each other the way species support each other in a healthy forest. Each layer of the system feeds the next layer. The waste from one plant becomes the food for another. Nothing leaves the system. Nothing needs to be brought in from outside. The foundation of this, in the eastern and central parts of the country, is what the Haudenosaunee people, the Iroquois Confederacy, called the Three Sisters: corn, beans, and squash, planted together in a single mound. This is not folklore. A 2016 study published in the journal Agronomy measured the yield difference between Three Sisters polyculture plots and monoculture plots growing the same three crops separately. The polyculture plots produced 20% more food per acre, no additional fertilizer, no additional water, 20% more food from the same ground, because the plants were working together instead of competing. The mechanism is worth understanding because once you see it, you will not look at a garden the same way again. The corn grows tall first. It becomes the vertical structure that the bean vines spiral up as they climb. The beans, as they grow, do something the corn cannot do on its own. Through a chemical relationship with specific bacteria living on their root nodules, beans pull nitrogen directly out of the air and deposit it into the soil. Nitrogen is the primary nutrient that corn consumes and depletes. The bean replaces everything the corn takes. Below the corn and the beans, the squash spreads wide, its enormous flat leaves creating a canopy over the soil that blocks sunlight from reaching the ground. Without sunlight, weeds cannot germinate. The soil stays cool. Moisture stays in the earth instead of evaporating. The squash is doing the work of mulching, weeding, and irrigation management all at once, just by growing. That is 3 plants. That is a closed loop. That is a system that has run continuously on the same ground for 800 years in documented sites in the Ohio Valley, as confirmed by archaeological soil analysis published by the University of Cincinnati in 2009. 800 years on the same plots. No fertilizer inputs. The soil did not degrade. The yield records embedded in the archaeology show it stayed consistent for centuries. Now here is what Clara added to this, what her grandmother added to what her grandmother knew. She does not stop at 3 sisters. She builds what she calls the 4th and 5th sisters. Her 4th sister is sunflower. Planted at the north end of each mound, the sunflower attracts specific pollinator insects that service the corn and the squash. It also produces seeds that are 40% oil by weight, a concentrated calorie source that stores for 18 months at room temperature and provides essential fatty acids that none of the other 3 crops supply. Her 5th sister is a medicinal herb, in her case wild bergamot, which repels certain beetle species that feed on squash vines. No pesticide. A plant doing the work of a pesticide, planted in the right place at the right time. 5 plants, 1 mound, a complete food production, pollination, pest control, and soil fertility system in a circle roughly 4 feet across. I want to take you now to the Mandan people of the Great Plains, because what they built on top of this foundation is the part that should make every agricultural economist in the country sit down and get quiet. The Mandan settled along the Missouri River in what is now North Dakota. They were not nomadic. They were farmers, and they were extraordinary ones. Agricultural geneticists at the University of Wisconsin documented in a 2003 paper that the Mandan maintained over 150 distinct varieties of corn, beans, squash, and sunflower, each one selected and refined over generations for specific conditions. A late frost variety, a drought variety, a short season variety for high elevation, a variety that produced 2 weeks earlier than any other, timed specifically to the narrow growing window of the northern plains. This was not accident. This was a deliberate, multi-generational plant breeding program, without a laboratory, without a university, without a government grant. The result was a seed library so resilient that it had a built-in answer for nearly any weather event the Missouri River Valley could produce. When one variety failed, another carried the harvest. Lewis and Clark wintered with the Mandan in 1804. Meriwether Lewis sent seed samples back to Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was a serious farmer, and he recognized immediately what he was looking at. He wrote in his journals that the Mandan varieties were superior to any corn he had grown at Monticello. He called the system remarkable. Then the expedition left. American settlement moved west, and the Mandan seed library was dismantled over the following 80 years through forced removal, the deliberate destruction of food stores as a military tactic, and the replacement of 150 adapted varieties with a single commodity crop chosen for ease of taxation and rail transport, not for nutritional value, not for the resilience, not for the people who were eating it. By 1930, most of those varieties were gone. The knowledge that maintained them was gone with them. In 1890, a USDA researcher named Volney Coville conducted what he called the first systematic study of Native American food plants. His final report documented over 500 edible plant species actively managed and harvested by tribes across the country. 500. Not wild plants stumbled upon by chance. Managed plants, tended plants. Plants that were understood so deeply that Coville noted in multiple entries that certain indigenous preparation methods significantly increased the nutritional availability of compounds that European cooking methods destroyed entirely. The report went into the USDA archives. It was not acted on. It was not distributed to agricultural schools. 1 decade later, the federal government began the most aggressive assimilation campaign in its history, and the explicit targeting of traditional food practices was part of it. Children were removed to boarding schools and fed white flour, lard, and canned goods. A generation grew up without the plant knowledge their grandparents had carried. The 500 species Coville documented began to vanish from active use, not because they failed, because the people who tended them were removed from the land. And here is where the story stops being history and starts being something you need to understand about the food on your table right now. Between 1903 and 2023, the United States lost 93% of the vegetable varieties that were commercially available at the start of the 20th century. 93%. That is from a report by the Rural Advancement Foundation International using USDA seed catalog records. Of the 408 tomato varieties available to American gardeners in 1903, 79 survive today. Of the 307 sweet corn varieties, 11 remain in commercial circulation. The seed industry is now controlled by 4 companies: Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, and BASF together control approximately 60% of the global commercial seed market. They acquired that control by buying independent seed houses over several decades and discontinuing traditional open-pollinated varieties in favor of proprietary hybrids that farmers cannot save and replant. The seed produces a crop. The crop does not reliably produce seed you can use next year. So you come back. Every year, you come back and you buy seed from the same company that sold it to you last year and the year before. The seed industry will tell you this happened because modern hybrids yield more food. That claim deserves a closer look. A 2011 paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences compared modern hybrid corn against traditional open-pollinated varieties across multiple growing seasons, including drought years specifically. In normal rainfall years, the hybrids outperformed traditional varieties by about 8%. In drought years, the traditional varieties outperformed the hybrids by up to 25%. 25% more food from saved seed in the years when food production matters most. That finding was published in one of the most respected scientific journals in the world. It did not appear in a single seed company's marketing material. The global processed food industry generated over $4.2 trillion in revenue in 2023. $4.2 trillion. The model that drives that number requires your participation. It requires that you do not grow your own food. Do not save your own seed. Do not know the 500 plants that Volney Colville documented in 1890. And do not have a Clara in your life to show you how a hillside in Montana feeds 11 generations of the same family without a single receipt. Now let me give you something practical. Because everything I have just told you is reversible in your own backyard this season for under $20. Here is the exact system. You need 200 square feet of ground that receives 6 hours of direct sunlight. That is smaller than a 2-car garage floor. Find your last frost date at the USDA Plant Hardiness Zone map online. It is free. After that date has passed, mound your soil into hills 12 inches tall and 18 inches wide at the base. Space them 4 feet apart, center to center. In each mound, press 4 to 6 corn seeds, 1 inch deep. Traditional open-pollinated varieties work best for this system. Bloody Butcher, Painted Mountain, or Glass Gem corn are all available from seed preservation companies for under $5 a packet, and all of them produce seeds you can save and replant indefinitely. Wait 2 weeks. The corn needs to reach 5 inches of height before anything else joins it. When it does, plant 4 pole bean seeds around the base of each corn stalk, about 6 inches out. Pole beans, not bush beans. Cherokee Trail of Tears is a traditional variety that has been grown continuously since before European contact and is still available today. 1 week after the beans go in, plant 3 squash seeds at the outer edge of each mound. Butternut squash stores 6 months at room temperature without any processing. Hubbard squash stores longer. Either one. Water each mound deeply once a week, not a little every day. Deeply, once. This forces the roots down toward consistent subsoil moisture and builds drought tolerance into the plants. After the first month, the squash canopy closes over the soil and the system largely manages itself. 8 mounds in 200 square feet will produce, conservatively, 60 to 80 pounds of squash, 30 to 40 pounds of dried beans, and 50 to 70 pounds of fresh corn over a single growing season. Dried beans store 2 to 3 years in a sealed jar at room temperature. Squash seeds store 4 to 5 years in a cool, dry place. You are not just growing a season of food, you are starting a seed library. Total cost for seed, $8 to $15. Total equipment required, a shovel, a hose, and 1 afternoon, Total monthly cost to maintain once planted, 0. 150 to 200 pounds of food, $300 to $500 worth of groceries at current prices. Grown in a space smaller than a parking spot, using no fertilizer, no pesticide, no purchased input of any kind after the first year because you were saving your own seed. Clara walked me back to her gate as the light was going low. I asked her what she thought about the fact that most Americans had never heard of any of this. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It was never lost. It was just not offered to you." That is the most precise description of what I have found doing this work for the past several years. The knowledge was not destroyed. In most cases, it was documented, filed, studied, confirmed, and then not passed on. Not because it failed, because passing it on was not profitable for the people who controlled what got passed on. The USDA had Coville's report in 1892. The Agronomy Journal confirmed the 20% yield advantage in 2016. The National Academy of Sciences published the drought resilience data in 2011. The Rural Advancement Foundation documented the 93% seed variety loss using the USDA's own catalog records. None of it is hidden. All of it is findable. The only thing that was missing was someone willing to connect it and hand it to you directly. Now you have it. I spent decades buying food from a system that was designed to sell me food. I thought a garden was a hobby. I thought self-sufficiency was something for people with farms and equipment and time I did not have. I did not understand because nobody told me that the people who lived on this land before any of us had developed food systems so complete, so self-maintaining, and so well adapted to every climate on this continent that they fed populations of tens of millions for 15,000 years, without a tractor, without a fertilizer bag, without a supply chain, and without a single company taking a margin on every calorie that passed through their hands. Clara's system is still running. The hillside in Montana is still producing. 11 generations, and it has not skipped a year. Drop your growing zone in the comments right now. Tell me what state you are in and whether you have ground that gets 6 hours of sun. And if anyone watching this comes from a family where this kind of knowledge was kept, whether indigenous, Amish, immigrant, or rural American, tell us what your grandparents grew. Tell us the variety names if you remember them. That information belongs to everyone watching this, and it starts to disappear the moment we stop saying it out loud. If this resonated with you, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. This knowledge belongs to all of us.